Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And right now, you can save £50 per person when you subscribe to Docu-Story cases. In this episode, a hotel fire reveals more than flames. It was a city that buzzed with ambition. A place where fortunes were made and dreams were chased under the glow of a million city lights. For Marcus Vance, a sharp and charismatic entrepreneur, this city was his playground. At 32, he had a reputation for turning bold ideas into gold. His name, a whisper of success in the most exclusive circles. He moved through the world with an easy confidence, a man who seemed to have everything figured out. That spring, his latest venture was taking flight, and the future looked as bright and boundless as the skyline he so admired. The Grand Majestic Hotel stood as a monument to old-world opulence. Its marble lobby, a silent witness to a century of secrets. It was here, in the heart of the city, that Marcus often held his most important meetings, using its luxurious atmosphere to charm investors and seal deals. On the evening of May 14th, he checked into a suite on the 22nd floor. It was supposed to be a routine overnight stay, a prelude to a pivotal presentation the next morning that would secure the funding for his most ambitious project yet. He called his sister around 9 p.m., his voice filled with the usual excitement. He told her everything was on track, that tomorrow was the big day. It was the last time anyone in his family would hear from him. The next morning, when Marcus failed to show up for his 10 a.m. meeting, aside, his business partner wasn't immediately alarmed. Marcus was a master of the dramatic entrance. But as the hours ticked by and calls to his phone went straight to voicemail, a knot of unease began to tighten. By late afternoon, a call was placed to hotel security. A wellness check was requested. A security manager, along with a housekeeper, used a master key to open the door to Suite 2208. What they found inside would turn the Grand Majestic from a symbol of luxury into the scene of a baffling crime. The room was in disarray. A story of a struggle written in overturned furniture and scattered papers. And on the floor, the life of a man full of promise had been brought to an abrupt and brutal end. The initial call to 911 brought a swarm of detectives to the pristine hotel. The medical examiner's preliminary findings were grim. Marcus Vance had not died of natural causes. The cause of death was blunt force trauma, a tragic conclusion to a life lived with such vibrancy. As investigators began to piece together the final hours of his life, they were faced with a puzzle that had too many pieces, and none of them seemed to fit. The first question was the most obvious: who would want Marcus dead? He was known as a driven businessman, but was there a darker side to his dealings? Was this a business deal gone wrong? A fatal negotiation that spiraled out of control? Detectives delved deep into Marcus's professional life. They interviewed dozens of associates, partners, and rivals. Marcus was playing in a high-stakes arena, and where there's big money, there's often big risks. They uncovered whispers of jealousy, of competitors who were threatened by his rapid ascent. One particular rival, a seasoned tycoon who had been outmaneuvered by Marcus on a recent deal, came under scrutiny. He had the motive, but his alibi was ironclad. He was on a flight to another continent at the time of the murder. The business angle, which seemed so promising at first, was leading them down a series of dead ends. The killer, it seemed, wasn't someone from the boardroom. 2. The investigation then pivoted to Marcus's personal life. Was there a secret that he kept hidden behind his polished public persona? Friends described him as generous and loyal, a man who was always there for those he cared about. But relationships can be complicated. Detectives discovered a recent, messy breakup with a woman who, they were told, had not taken the split. Well, could a crime of passion be the answer? They brought her in for questioning. She was emotional, heartbroken, but her grief seemed genuine. And like the business rival, her alibi for the night of the murder was solid, verified by multiple friends. The personal angle, too, seemed to be dissolving before their eyes. The question remained: if not business and not love, then what? With traditional motives failing to provide a suspect, investigators turned their full attention to the physical evidence from the crime scene. The suite of the Grand Majestic was a treasure trove of potential clues. The forensics team had worked meticulously, dusting for prints, collecting fibers, and swabbing for DNA. The room was in disarray, but there were no signs of forced entry. This suggested that Marcus had either let his killer into the room or that the killer had a key. The hotel's electronic lock system was a critical piece of the puzzle. It recorded every time a keycard was used to enter a room. The logs for Suite 2208 told a fascinating story. The data logs showed Marcus's keycard being used at 9:05 p.m., consistent with his arrival. Then, at 11:17 p.m., another keycard accessed the room. This was the mystery card. It wasn't registered to Marcus, and it wasn't a staff master key. It was a card that, according to the hotel's system, shouldn't have even existed. It had been programmed at a front desk terminal earlier that day, but the employee login associated with the transaction belonged to someone who swore they were on their dinner break at that exact time. It was a ghost in the machine. This revelation pointed to a sophisticated killer, someone who knew how to manipulate the hotel's security systems. It suggested a level of planning that was chilling. Who had the knowledge and access to create this phantom keycard? The investigation turned inward, focusing on the hotel staff. Every employee who worked that day was interviewed. Their lives were put under a microscope. Was there a disgruntled employee with a grudge? Someone with a hidden criminal past? 4 weeks, detectives chased leads within the hotel, but each one led to a frustrating dead end. The staff seemed to be just as shocked and terrified as the public. The hotel, once a symbol of security and escape, now felt vulnerable. The phantom keycard remained just that, a phantom. The case was growing colder by the day, the trail of the killer seemingly vanishing into thin air. Months turned into a year. The case of Marcus Vance, the brilliant entrepreneur murdered in a luxury hotel, became one of the city's most infamous cold cases. For the Vance family, the lack of answers was a constant, agonizing weight. They held press conferences, offered rewards, and did everything in their power to keep Marcus's story in the public eye. But with no new leads, the investigation stalled. It seemed the killer had committed the perfect crime. But in the world of modern forensics, no secret stays buried forever. A new technology, one that could extract usable DNA from previously untestable samples, was about to change everything. 2 years after the murder, a cold case detective, refusing to let the file gather dust, decided to resubmit the evidence from Suite 2208 for this new type of analysis. Among the items was a small, seemingly insignificant piece of a broken drinking glass found partially under the bed. The original tests had yielded nothing, but the new, more sensitive process managed to isolate a tiny DNA profile. It didn't belong to Marcus Vance. It was a long shot, but they ran the profile through the national database. And then, they got a hit. The DNA belonged to a man named Julian Croft, a former hotel security consultant who had been fired from a different hotel chain for embezzlement a year before the murder. Suddenly, the phantom key had a face. Julian Croft wasn't a business rival or a spurned lover. He was a ghost, a professional who specialized in the unseen. His expertise was in bypassing the very security systems he was once paid to install. Investigators discovered that Croft, deep in debt, had been targeting wealthy hotel guests. His method was elegant and terrifying. He would identify a target, use his inside knowledge to create a duplicate keycard, and enter their room late at night, expecting to find an empty suite to burglarize. But on the night of May 14th, his plan went horribly wrong. He'd and expected Marcus Vance to be in the room. The burglary turned into a confrontation, the confrontation into a struggle, and the struggle into a murder. It wasn't personal. It was a random, tragic collision of two worlds. Justice, it turned out, had been waiting patiently in a shard of broken glass. The city could finally close the book on the murder at the Grand Majestic. But for the family of Marcus Vance, the loss of a life so full of promise would remain an open wound forever. But for the family of Marcus Vance, the loss of a life so full of promise would remain an open wound forever. Thank you for watching. You found this story compelling. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into fascinating cases. Your support helps us continue to bring these important stories to light. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.